Good morning and welcome to Snake Find Your Truth, July 5th, 2022 edition. Oh my gosh, what is happening in the world since I was last with you? I'm generally speechless on these things, but today I'm going to make some connections that I think are really important and need to be made. I often speak about the legality of psychedelics and the changing landscape and the war on drugs. Well, since I last spoke to you, Roe versus Wade has been overturned, and Jalen Walker, an unarmed African-American man, was shot 90 rounds, shot 60 times at a traffic stop. So both of these are unspeakable, and I feel sick and blind rage when I think about them. But it's extremely important to me that, I say how unspeakably wrong these two actions are. This is the law not taking care of the people it is there to protect. And number two, I want to make some connections with psychedelic law and the war on drugs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read an article I wrote on LinkedIn this morning, and I'm going to amplify a little bit here. Do you remember the campaign with the eggs? This is your brain. And then sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. This is your brain on drugs. Do you remember that campaign? So that was the 80s, early 80s, early to mid. In 1971, Nixon, in the midst of having, Richard Nixon, President of the United States, in the midst of having some very serious problems with the Soviet Union, decided to, we could say, distract the nation by declaring the war on drugs to be the most serious threat to the United States of America. In so doing, implying a racist structure that painted non-white sellers and traffickers of drugs as violent and dangerous, while not holding to account the consistent and significant usage of all types of illegal substances by white people, white wealthy people in power. The punishments, the levels of incarceration, the relative sentencing is, the evidence is overwhelming that people in need, people who actually experience injustice economically, systemically, racially, because of disability, all these things have they do not have a safety net, whereas the law claims to be keeping us safe. I could go on and on about this, and I'm not the most qualified person to speak on it, but it is important to speak. And so the war on drugs at its heart was a distraction tactic, was a overlay. It was a kind of arbitrary, like all laws are, line in the sand that said these substances are bad, scary, harmful. Well, all this conditioning is coming at us and at our parents and at our teachers. And I know that many of, my generation's parents had experimented a lot with illegal drugs in a very unboundaried way when they were very young. Many of them had had difficult experiences, some of them not so much, but the generation did not support their children in experimenting, that's for sure, for a variety of complicated reactive reasons. And so we had a lot of messages coming at us. Drugs are bad, drugs are bad, drugs are bad. And they came at our brain pretty hard, talk about our brain on drugs. So we got this conditioning. And so now when I talk to people who are intelligent, successful in their fields, doing endeavors, living lives, and grown-ups. So many people say, "Oh, but drugs are bad." And, is there some truth to this? Absolutely. We have an opioid crisis. And another way the law is not protecting us. Is addiction a real thing? Absolutely. But so much has been put together under one umbrella here. And what we've got is, first, it was cannabis that is now legalized in Canada and continues its journey of legalization in the United States. This is a plant that we can grow. That's a very, very, very different operation. Then there is psilocybin mushrooms, which have also been lumped in with all of the trafficked substances. Trafficking is a whole other issue, which I've got lots and thoughts and feelings on, and is also racist and exploitative. There are many issues around the prosecution of trafficking, but when we're talking about psychedelic mushrooms, we're generally not talking about moving them very far. In fact, they're grown in our forests and they are growable. So the lumping them together with danger is a very, very interesting phenomenon. They are also not physiologically addictive. They're just not. And the number of trips to the emergency room due to psychedelic mushrooms is negligible. The only time you have people going to the emergency room generally for psychedelic mushrooms is when they're very young and they do something very stupid. But you are not having overdoses because it's not that type of a substance. It's not. And you're not having poisoning because it's not that type of a substance. It's not a poison. It is ultimately a healer. It is part of plant medicine. And this is where I make the connection with Roe versus Wade. Because women and men, people, for thousands of years, have known how to use plants to heal, to enhance, to grow, to nourish, to sustain. We have used plants to clear infection, to relax us, to increase our libido, to give us visions, to help with digestion, with immunity, for fever. We use plants, plant medicine, herbal medicine. And this relationship to the plants outside our door has been cut. Just like our relationship to the natural cycle of time when we started working in the factories and took the clocks, and we had to work by the clock, not the light, because we had electricity and we had clocks and all these things. Bit by bit, we've been separated from the natural cycle, from the way we are, from the ways we feel in different seasons, different days of the month, different times. And we've been separated, and then we've gotten lost, and now we are complicit in the separation. You often hear about internalized misogyny, internalized racism. Like when you start to see, I'll only speak about internalized misogyny because that's what I can experience. The levels at which I have supported the patriarchy, the levels at which I have supported colonization are absolutely astronomical. Because anytime I push myself or another human being past the state of natural, juicy flow, I'm breaking my connection with nature. And that's not to judge myself, although I do feel shame about some of the things that I've done in my life to myself and others that have been trying to push. Um, it's not to judge, it's to see. It's to see. And to start to see how we're constantly putting ourselves into this right or wrong, good or bad. I'm a good girl. I don't do drugs. And so in this article, what I'm encouraging, and it's on LinkedIn, I can give you the link. What I'm encouraging is that we take a moment when something comes up for us, like, I'm a good girl, I don't do drugs. Take that into your sacred reflection time and come into sovereignty around that statement. I'm not suggesting that we all should work with psychedelic medicine. I'm not suggesting that we all should do any one thing. No. But I am suggesting that much of what we say is not ours. Who told us what was good and what was bad? What does it mean to be a good girl? What does it mean to do drugs? Giving ourselves the sacred space to say, what am I afraid of? What could happen? Allowing our body to feel those things and noticing, oh my goodness, these are old. You know, my grade 3 teacher said that. And all the love in the world to my grade 3 teacher. But perhaps Alison at 47 years old in 2022 doesn't need to live by everything she said. That maybe she and I have different paradigms, live in different times. Maybe I'll make different choices. But when these voices of fear come in, they inhabit us and they become big, right? And we're living in a time when the law is not on our side. I'm not saying it's 1,000% against us. I'm not saying that at all. But it is clear that people are not safe, especially racialized minorities. It is clear that women's reproductive rights and bodies are not respected, which means that none of our bodies are respected. But let's start with women. And so one has to ask, are the laws about what I eat, especially when it's plants that grow in my land, are they in place for my benefit? I'm also not saying to do anything that's against the law. Definitely not saying that. But it's very important that we each have our position. We are free to think and feel what we want to think and feel, and to work through the layers of fear in the levels of self-reflection that I guide you through in the article. And I'll read some of the questions in a moment to really come to what is your truth. So these are the things I hear people say all the time. I don't do drugs. I don't even take Tylenol, as if that's somehow bad. I don't want to become addicted. I don't want to lose control. No medicines for everyone. That's true of plants and it's true of pharmaceutical compounds. But the war on drugs created a level of fear around a particularly chosen set of substances that has remained virtually unquestioned in many people to this day. I have a completely different perspective on this. Plant medicine is our lineage. It's our connection to the land. It's our connection to who we are. A wealth of understanding and experience has been passed down through the generations. In the past 100 years, we've been stripped of that lineage, 100 plus years, and told we need experts to prescribe us medicines, and that some of the plants we've been working with for generations are dangerous. It's fascinating that we can keep poisons in our home, including alcohol, but possessing a mushroom we can forage and which has demonstrated healing properties has been deemed illegal. And so, despite feeling drawn to the medicine and seeing ample research of its benefits, many people tell me they're afraid or feeling like they will be bad if they try these medicines. There's this undercurrent of fear. The fear is also evident in many other areas of life. The fear to speak our truth, to be visible, to make our own choices, to do what we want to do rather than what we've been told we should do or what we have been told is secure or safe. Ultimately, it is the fear to live a life of sovereignty. We are afraid to be completely ourselves. I happen to be talking about psychedelic medicine, but this undercurrent of fear applies to everyone, whether psychedelic medicine is your path or not. What most of us fear is the same: violence, abandonment, poverty, suffering. These are the fears that keep us from living fully. Now is the time to pick up the rock and look underneath it, to broaden and deepen our perspective so that these patterns of fear no longer control us. Again, I am not saying we do whatever we want. I am not saying that we don't care about the law. I'm talking about our inner state in relationship to the law. Here's my suggestion on how to reflect on fear, including the fear of working with a medicine that you're curious about, but not exclusively. You can work with any fear here. Create a sacred space for yourself with time, a journal. Set the space apart and get ready to dig deep. Connect to the natural world in which you live. Like, feel your feet, feel the sand, the mud, the earth, the water, whatever it is. Feel your connection to it. Feel your belonging here. You belong here. And then start asking, what am I afraid of? What will happen if that happens? What will happen if that happens? What am I really afraid of? And just let yourself have all the thoughts and feelings and let them flow. Ask yourself again and again, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by sick? What do I mean by homeless? What do I mean by scared? What do I mean by unloved? What do I mean by it? Let yourself think and free think this. You will probably find at first that the things you say are repeated from other sources, things you've heard or read. Keep going. This is the art of contemplation, of critical thinking infused with intuition, of allowing yourself to have your own opinions, of being a thinker. Thinking is never finished. Thinking does not come to one truth. If you ever read an author and you read their book and then you realize they've got 5 more after that, it never stops. Thinking is about allowing yourself to be with what is true for you right now and go deeper and deeper and let it change. That's thinking. Here's some signs you're opening up. You relax a bit. You get excited. You want to learn something. You feel some emotion. You make a new kind of resolve. Like, I'm going to do it this way, not that way, this way. All of these things indicate a coming home to yourself, which is the opposite of fear. It's a relaxing into yourself. The law hasn't changed. The world hasn't changed. It continues to be a shit show, but you are doing the work of coming home. Connected to yourself, you can face all the challenges differently. You can learn, inquire, support, and challenge the world because you are present and relaxed. You gain strength as you address directly the things that you have been taught and come to your own in progress understandings about life, your own. And in a magical turn of fate, this is actually what the mushrooms help us do. So if and when we do feel ready and safe and drawn, they're right here saying, hey, you want to come more into your own? Do you want that? We're here for you. Thanks very much, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.